So the Facility Assessment Subcommittee meeting was on, when was it? Last week, right?
30th.
Losing track. It went fine. It was the standard sort of format for those meetings, and Dr. Hackett presented the district sort of vision, and Tepe presented kind of an introduction to the design very quickly, and then Hill presented cost. And then there was a series of questions, none of which were, deal breakers. They have curiosity, a lot of interest around the site, a lot of interest around regulatory issues around the site, which we can clarify for them. They wanted to see more development of the site diagram. And of course, they readily acknowledge that everything is a diagram, but then they say, so why isn't it designed? So, but this is sort of customary for almost every FAS you do. They then summarize those comments and send them to us via email. So we have the comments. And we also got the PSR comments back from the MSBA. We have 10 days to respond to those, which we will do. Again, there's nothing there that's particularly alarming. They wanted more clarity around the transfer of the water department land to the school department, which Meg has kindly provided. And we have a series of a couple of questions for the district that Dr. Hackett will answer, and Tepe has some questions, some clarifications to answer, and then Andy needs to update the schedule and answer a couple of budget questions, but ultimately none of it is too heavy a lift. So with that, as we complete those comment responses, we really are pretty much officially done with the PSR.
Okay. Any questions for Charlie?
We also have some additional question from MSBA on Friday, and Vivian answered that today as well.
Okay.
That's great.
Next, we have the phase and logistics that Frank will take on.
Sure. Thank you, Jay. Good evening, everybody. So I don't think there's anything new. As a report last time, the school committee did meet. They invited Jay back to represent EFPBC. They had a discussion around the phasing logistics options that were discussed at the previous meeting that they had Jay at, as well as Charlie. And there was really strong opinion. And I think really while they did not vote, I would say unanimous opinion that getting all the students off the site would be the right thing to do and the preferred option. And I did share with them that would be my recommendation if I were, in fact, charged with making a recommendation that evening. We will continue to push for that. I just think that just even from an economic standpoint, the numbers have shown out that it's the right thing to do, not to mention the fact that it just makes the project a lot smoother. And for everybody, whether people realize it or not, while some people may not be excited about going to Parkhurst, I am quite sure that if they were on that site and having to deal with that traffic every single day, they would probably not enjoy it for that long of time. So that's where we are. We have spent quite a bit of time internally looking at what the options are. As you know, Charlie has shared the 8 modular unit scenario with us out of Parkhurst. We're quite confident that would accommodate at least 1 through 5, potentially K through 5, but certainly 1 through 5. Now we're just kind of doing the calculations on whether or not we can keep pre-K there, because that would be kind of a preferred, given that it's a district-wide program and they've settled in quite nicely, but we're really not there yet in the decision-making. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. I'd be happy to try to answer.
Greg, I think we could add that when we left there with them asking for more information back, that's what you're working on, is to get them the additional information.
Yeah, it is, Jay, but at the same time, some of that information is really not going to be immediately available. So I don't feel like they're really waiting on anything from me or from us
Okay,
to make a decision because, we have time and I think we should take the time we need to, particularly when we're talking about what the enrollments might look like next year. I don't think we should rush a decision on it. I know the question just comes down to modular units. We do need to try to answer that, sooner rather than later. But, to the extent that we float anything in terms of a final solution right now, I don't really see, unless I'm missing it, I don't see the urgency of doing that. And again, I don't see what the school committee would need for additional information in terms of cost. They are going to want to know what are the options, which obviously, we'll bring those. And likely we'll bring them options. I think it's probably easier than, have them review, we could do this, or we could do that, we could do this for discussion purposes.
right.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree with Frank's take on that, Jay. I think it's not so much that understanding which option we would go with is really going to affect their interest in getting everybody off site. It seemed to be much more just a hunger to understand, knowing there's multiple ways to do it, which way might it ultimately be? And that I think the committee recognizes is really in Frank's hands, and he's got to get more input from the parent and teacher community and think through some operational issues as well.
Okay, I agree. Moving on to the updated Parkhurst drawings and budgets for
Hey,
Charlie.
John has his hand raised.
I had a question. So
Sorry.
I think what Frank, that my understanding it right, Frank, that you're saying that the 8 modulars would get the grades 1 through 5 into Parkhurst, but that assumes that central office is gone, right?
Correct.
And that would include pre-K staying?
That's what I'm not sure about yet, John. That's the work we still have to do.
So there's pre-K plus kindergarten in question.
Right.
Okay. So that's what, 9 sections?
Could be 10.
Okay.
There are 6 sections of, well, no, it's more like, it'd be more like 8 to 9.
Okay. So you asked why it matters. And I think everything you're saying is correct if the carriage house wasn't on the plate. So, if we didn't have to worry, if that wasn't a question that's going to be voted on in a month from now. So, so the way I'm hearing it is 8 modulars gets 1st through 5th there, but that assumes central office is gone. And then probably we could need up to 8 more modulars for kindergarten and pre-K.
John, I'm not sure that's quite right. I think what Frank is saying, 8 modulars allows us to get the kids off the site. It's more about the kids we're getting off than saying definitively where they go, because Frank has some conversations he needs to have with others in the district.
Okay. All right. Okay. Sorry.
Any other questions on that? All right, Charlie, Parkhurst.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes,
You seeing the big screen there?
yes.
Okay, so we wanted to just briefly, we did update the kind of concepts around the potential Parkhurst swing space based on the meeting a week ago, to try to explore that a little bit further. Where am I here? Am I advancing the slides or am I not? Okay, now I should be all right. So do you see that slide?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is the preferred option. This is the option that we have already shared with you. The idea here is that, as Dr. Hackett just mentioned, this is removing central office from this location. So all we did here is count up rooms, basically. And this gets us to about 20 rooms on the upper floor with 8 modulars. So this is not any new information. However, it does show you kind of a room count. And it does split the large classroom on the kind of up the far left on the upper side of the corridor, which is a big classroom, into 2 in order to get this count. But that gets us to 20. So theoretically, you could possibly have 5 sections of 5 4-section grades. So that's kind of where we are with that. Nothing else here has really changed. We then, because the conversation came up last time, well, what if district doesn't leave? We did another scheme that adds not 8 modulars, but 16 modulars. And that presumes that all these rooms are being shared between district administration and classrooms. And we didn't assign rooms. We didn't divvy rooms up. All we said is, this is basically, give or take, how many modulars we could fit on site. It's 16, and it's giving us kind of 26 plus rooms to share. And how those get shared is not a discussion we're prepared to have, nor a discussion we analyzed. But that's 20 plus classrooms, and then 6 more rooms that either go to district admin or they go to specials and the like. And there are spaces downstairs, even if some of the pre-K stays downstairs, there are rooms at the Parkhurst that can be deployed for things like library, music, and art. And then, of course, we do have a gym here. So this sort of fits on the site. You can see it. We have it at an angle to avoid the hill. We are taking the entire softball field here and putting in 60 parking spaces, which may even not be enough, because this is essentially relocating most of the Lynch plus central admin to one site. So whether 60 spaces is even adequate, I don't know. But it was what kind of easily fit here with a kind of car drop-off loop. Cars come in, they have their right-hand, passenger door to the curb. And obviously we'd have to have a landscape solution of a walk or something that was long enough that it negotiated this slope at an appropriate code compliant slope. We haven't done that analysis either, particularly, other than to suggest that you could have a walkway that came down, arrived essentially at the front of the building, which then you could get into the modulars, you could go around and get into the other door. We have a relocated play area that's now sort of moved more to plan right here, although you could set up some sort of play in this kind of limited courtyard here as well. And again, this is not a design. This is just moving boxes around to see what we thought was realistic. And there are obviously some subtleties here that would probably be developed over time if this was the direction that was selected. But we think it's realistic to think you could get 16 modulars here. So this option is the 16 modular option as opposed to the 8 modular option, because the question came up last week. Well, what if? What if district admin doesn't go to the carriage house? What happens? And we still want to get Lynch students offsite, and we still want to get Lynch students to the Parkhurst. So those are all, that is what we were responding to here with this scheme. So this is something you all have not seen in the past. But as you can see, it's a crowded site. And, we might be able to squeeze a couple more parking lot spaces in somewhere. We could probably get a few handicap spaces down in where the old parking lot is now, which would be appropriate. So there wouldn't be the long travel distance, but you could get 2 or 3 or 4 handicap spaces right down here where the old parking lot is, I believe. But it's a tight site. So there's the comparison of the 2 of them. What we're calling preferred option and backup option. Preferred option obviously is relocating central administration. The modular classrooms at the Parkhurst suddenly, compared to the one on the right, look quite modest compared to the new solution, and somehow a little more appropriately scaled. We still, as we just talked about before, we still have to do some supplemental parking. It's just not so gigantic. And then the one on the right, of course, is this new sort of 16 classroom option. So that's what we came up with, sort of to answer the question, the what if question. And then from a cost point of view, we took, again, there's only so much we can do here at this really early stage, but we tried to come up with some reasonable assumptions on what the cost differential might be. The left-hand preferred option, the blue, has not changed. That continues to be the 9.3 million. That has the same values for the modulars as it had previously, has the $2 million for the leasing, leasing, delivering, building, leasing, delivering, leasing, and taking back out the 8 modular classrooms. It has allowances for site modifications that were developed by a cost estimator. And then the one on the right both of them have the limited upgrades to Parkhurst that we've been using as a budget number for the improvements to the Parkhurst itself for students, right? So the assumption being, well, we're gonna have to do some stuff to the Parkhurst just to make it turn it back into an appropriate learning environment. I mean, we got to have whiteboards. We have to have, those kind of things. We have to have a place for kids to hang their coats and the like. But this budget is 16 modular classrooms, and we simply took the same unit price that we used for the 8 and applied it to 16, straight multiplication. Site work modifications, we asked the cost estimator what they thought that might be for a value. They gave us a per parking spot allowance that we applied to this $500,000, this $500,000 for the parking lot. And we're using, we doubled the site restoration on the presumption that we're doubling the amount of site improvements. And we're carrying a slightly larger modular soft cost allowance simply because it's twice as many modulars. And that soft cost allowance is design fees, it's technology, loose technology, it's loose furniture and equipment as needed. Obviously, some stuff can come over from the Lynch. And so those are very kind of, wild assumptions right now. And they're very modest as a percentage of construction compared to a normal project. But the presumption is most of the stuff can just be brought over. We don't have to repurchase it. The design fees and the management fees should be quite modest because this is modular construction. It's not a real job. We still have to go through some standard procurement, but we shouldn't have to go through the full kind of public construction procurement. So that gives us our 5.6. And in this case, the modulars at Parkhurst in the preferred option are 3.3 million, and the modulars in the backup option are 5.6 million. And that's because well, not entirely, because there are the Parkhurst improvements, but the fact of the matter is most of the costs on the right are being generated by the modular projects, while most of the costs on the left are being generated by the carriage house restoration. So that's kind of where we ended up on cost. And then this is just purely a reminder. This is the exact same slide you've already seen of the timeline, just as a reminder about why we're having this conversation in the spring instead of the fall, because the goal was to if it's the preferred option, to be able to design, bid, and build the carriage house before the summer, or basically before the summer of 23, so that district can get out of the Parkhurst, and plan B really, and to do the design for the modulars so that we can begin the procurement right after the debt override vote, because it will take a while to get them fabricated and delivered. And again, the goal was to do that by the summer of 23. So the summer of 23, we want district to be moving out, we want modulars to be arriving, and we want students to be showing up on September 1st or whatever with an empty Parkhurst and available classroom space. So either scenario, preferred or backup, we kind of need to get going on this modular piece, which is why there's the town meeting.
We have Chris and then John Miller.
So that's where we are.
waiting.
So Charlie, can I just ask you to go, well, actually on this slide, I would just say we'll be clear in the background language then to town meeting that given the sort of limited ask for the design and engineering scope for procurement, that depending upon the outcome of the first article, it'll drive either a limited or a much sort of broader scope of modular classrooms. But one is sort of related to the other. So we'll explain that. Charlie, can you go back like go back to that first floor plan slide where you were showing the 8 modulars? So so down at that, we do have this extra large classroom down there, and you've noted you drew a line. I just wanted to clarify, you're not suggesting we actually put up a partition, right? That was just sort of a way to sort of show we're putting 2 sections in there.
Yeah, either way. I mean, we're just suggesting it's large enough that you potentially have the floor space to do more than one grade, one more classroom.
I was just going to suggest then, so that we're consistent with these graphic tools, that could probably be a dashed line. You can still do the 1 and the 2. And then if you go to the next slide, you should treat it the same way, because I think you're only counting 1 section in that space.
That's correct, because in that case, we made the assumption that could end up being admin, district admin.
Oh, okay. So
right. Because district admin, we're not assigning any spaces anywhere here. We're saying if district is here and kids are here, that all has to get sorted. But it's perfectly possible that district would deploy that classroom number 1 as office space, which is why we didn't split it in half.
Okay, so I guess I was reading, I thought I had heard you say we weren't assigning spaces, and then I saw the 1, so I just wasn't sure what that meant.
We're not assigning spaces, we're assigning numbers to spaces, but we didn't presume to split it in half.
I got it.
Can I just make a quick comment on that? I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump a turn, but we do need, don't forget, school admin space, and that would be likely where we would put it, given that's the main entry of the building, and we've set it up that way.
And on this slide, so I'll share with everybody what we did with VO. So we actually had 2 sections in that large classroom at VO. They were, 2 independent, I think it was first grade. They happened to be slightly smaller sections, and that was maybe one of our first co-teaching models, Frank, sort of by necessity. But we did get 2 sections in there. And then school admin was actually set up across from that hallway in that kind of open lobby area. We had a couple of desks. And then we have 3 offices there, principal, assistant principal. I think the nurse was in one of those, or maybe the nurse was down the hall. So we can always dig that stuff up. But admin was at the front of the building, but that large room, Charlie, where you have a number 1, was set up for 2 classrooms, just for what it's worth. But
John Miller?
Yeah, would you go back 1 slide up to the same one with the 8 modulars, Charlie? So I walked the site last weekend, a week ago. If you take those 8 modulars and rotate them about 60 degrees, 50, a little slightly more than clockwise, a little more than 45, you miss the telephone pole and you miss moving the playground. And I think there's room. I walked that off. So that might be a way to not have to move the playground and not have to move the utilities. The pole is high enough that I think the power you might end up dropping the power right where the pole is right now, where classroom 19 is. You might end up dropping power into there, into the new modulars. So I think there's a way to save substantial amount of time and money right there. I look at the other one and all I see is a parking. It's going to be a traffic. The second one is going to be traffic problem. But
yep,
I just think it's a dead end street. It's uphill. So anyway.
Okay. Any other questions on this, on Charlie's presentation? Frank again?
Yeah, not to be contrarian, but when I look at the second one, I would actually suggest that that's a better parking and drop-off solution than the first one, even wondering whether or not that makes more sense to think about even with the preferred option, just because there's no queue space, and how when you take a look at the front of the building and what we're doing right now, especially if we have pre-K, but we'll have plenty of parents who are driving their kids and dropping off. And they're going to be queued all the way down that road and out onto the main roads like they are now with pre-K. So I wonder whether putting all the parking and the drop off and bus stuff up on the soccer field or a softball field makes sense to look at longer term.
Anyone else? Okay, I did, after our meeting last week and then school committee, we met, Meg, Frank, Chris, myself met with Mark and Beth to go over the 2 articles and the response from the bond council. We read them. We do agree with what the bond council said. I did approve it, and I sent out a copy afterwards to everyone. Looking from the outside, we've been so involved that I think we read it one way, but just looking at it from the outside, the agreement was to make 2 different articles, and we're just going to have to push on the second one, that it has to be taken no matter what. And that will come with the, that'll be up to us to really push that. Make sure everyone understands that it's both, not just one. Meg, do you have a question on that?
I do. Can someone share the screen and we can look at them, and then can we get a vote from the EFPBC again? I know the articles were already voted, but if we can vote them again, and then I'm not sure if we voted the motions, but if you could vote the whole package, that would be great to have on the record.
I'm looking right now, Meg.
I don't think we voted.
Was that Friday, Jay? You sent that out?
It was probably Friday, Friday morning.
I might be able to do it. Let's see here.
Chris, it's on the, I loaded it up on the website on the, for the 4-4 meeting minutes. It's in there.
Okay.
But before we vote,
today,
we can do it afterwards, but I sent something around this afternoon late. I'd like to talk about it as another way to try to take some of the pain out of this.
Who did you send it to?
I sent it to everybody.
Oh, I didn't receive it.
Okay,
What
it's
was
also
it?
on.
Use our
It's also
email.
on. Yes.
There's an email.
does not look like it was sent to Jay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I didn't see anything.
I replied to him, I thought. Well,
It's also on the Google Docs website.
I couldn't figure out how to load it onto the Google Docs website. If I was successful, I don't know it.
No, I put it out there as soon as I got your email, John.
Oh,
So it's,
Maybe we can have a brief discussion on other business.
there you go. Chris has got the articles.
So
Okay.
if this, Don, if this is what Jay sent out, then this
That's what
is-
Jake sent out. Yes.
Got it. Okay. So basically what bond counsel and the controller felt strongly, in a way, this is sort of a homecoming of language for town meeting. This is kind of where we started, right? We had an article for the carriage house, and then we had an article for modulars, and it was the school committee that was saying, well, gee, what if we could get everybody off site? And we were trying to react to that by making Article 1 all inclusive. And I'll ask Meg to, clarify if I say this wrong, but basically bond counsel was saying, if Article 1 is A plus B, and Article 2 is the exact same B that's in Article 1, that's sort of needlessly confusing. So just go with it. Let A be Article 1, let B be Article 2, and you can make the case why they're both important. And as we were saying earlier, if Article 1 fails, then we'll still make the case to town meeting that the project team will push even with Article 2 to try to find a way to get kids off site.
There's a logical, I agree with you, Chris, but there's a logical problem with the way it's written now. I mean, there's a logical problem no matter how you write it. because the Parkhurst school bonds are for two different things, depending on what happens in the first one. Right?
There, no, so John,
But the
there,
dollar amount was exactly the same, John.
Right.
right. So we'll have to be clear, John, to town meeting that the actual work, right, the actual modulars and any work we do at Parkhurst, that all gets rolled into the debt exclusion override for the project. And so that's why the actual money we're asking for is the same. And I think we should all appreciate Charlie's flexibility on this a little bit, because if I were in his shoes, it's a little bit more work to do one versus the other. But I mean, Tappe and Hill have basically told us, you know, a parking lot is a parking lot, and Hill is going to spend some time developing the RFP. As I understand it, Charlie, it's the modular manufacturers kind of, I mean, in a way, you're not really creating construction documents, right? It almost sounds like the modular manufacturers create shop drawings, and those become the construction documents. So it's a little bit short-circuited. So for all those reasons, John, that's why the dollar value is
I know all that, and I agree with that. I understand it, but it's going to be, we have to make, that's what's going to confuse people.
Right. And it was the dollar value that was driving that. Even, you know, when Beth and Mark were looking at it, seeing that it was the same price for both was just getting confusion. So, you know, we just have to work with it. And
yeah,
we need one to pass, but
We need both to pass, really.
we need both, right?
Yeah,
But
because
it's gonna be
if-
very difficult with just two, right?
Right, I mean, but if one passes, you definitely need two to pass, and
Right.
if one doesn't pass, you need two to pass.
Well, yeah, I get it, but I'm not there.
so I'm happy to make a motion, Jay, that we approve once more the article, and in this instance, the motions for these two articles as presented, reviewed and approved by bond counsel and the comptroller's office with management.
Okay. So, Mark, second?
Mhm.
Okay. John Miller?
No.
No, okay. Mark, Geetha?
Jay, I was just wondering, can we hear what John Miller has to say? I thought that's what he was asking at the beginning, correct?
He's gonna bring up an email that he sent.
Right.
Is it
I
regarding
thought it was-
Parkhurst, John?
It's regarding swing space.
Regarding
Yeah.
swing space, so we'll bring it up,
Yeah.
we'll review it at, it's not gonna change what this is into the printers, so we're just gonna get a vote if we approve this or not.
Okay,
But
okay.
we'll bring up at other business, we'll see if it's something we can discuss or if it's something that isn't for us. Or it might be for Charlie, I don't know. We'll have to look at it. So we're just looking for a vote to reassure what I've already done, but that's what we're looking for a vote on. We're really behind the gun on this. We've been behind the gun the whole time with MSBA and everything we've had to do with this. So we haven't had time to, ideally we would have come back tonight with the result from the bond council, but we didn't have that time to do that. It had to go to the printer.
Yeah. So does that mean, Jay, this Article 1 and 2 part of that's with the option of taking all the kids off the site? Is that what it's working towards? Article 1 or 2?
Yes, because that's the school
could be.
committee's request.
Okay, so
So
why the
can I
design?
clarify, Geeta? So Article 1 is just, Article 1 is carriage house, and then central office moves out. And so that makes available the space we have at Parkhurst. So this would, if Article 1 passes, we still need some modulars, but it's the 8 modulars that Charlie was showing earlier that we've seen before. But if Article 1 fails and then Article 2 passes, then it's a much larger number of modulars, because obviously we can't move central office into the carriage house. But
Okay,
the
so that's
intention
where
behind,
the confusion is. So between Article 1 and 2, whatever the option, it would not give the end result of getting all the kids off the site.
yes,
Is
it
what I'm
would.
saying?
It would. If Article
Yeah.
1 passes and Article 2 passes, we get all the kids off site. If
How
Article
about the
1
scenario,
fails,
Article 1 doesn't pass, then Article 2, this dollar amount won't get the kids off the site. correct?
It's only for the
No.
design, Geetha. It's only
Yeah,
for the
this is-
design.
So the
Cafe-
design where the eight,
TAPA's fee proposal for 8 modulars or 16 modulars is $16,750 at this point of the design phase.
Right.
It's enough money for them to get moving in the preliminary design of the site and the school improvements and put together the initial RFP so that once the full funds are approved, hopefully at fall town meeting, then the subsequent design fees that might be needed to complete all of that work would then be appropriated. But their fee, and that's why those two separate articles was so confusing, is because the fee for only 8 modulars and the fee for 16 modulars was the exact same number.
okay, that's what I was saying. If that's the explanation, Meg, I would just go for it. But with the due respect, we have to listen to the other business too. That's all.
Right. So you just need a vote on this to move on. Yes or no?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. Don,
Yes.
Frank,
Aye.
John?
John, you're muted.
Yep. John, you muted. Maybe you stepped away. We'll go to Todd.
Aye.
Lisa?
Yes.
Okay. Come back to John. You there?
Maybe he can't hear you.
And Ceciliana, are you there?
Well, it's fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. We'll just make note. Maybe he had to leave.
Sorry, I'm here.
Oh,
That's an aye.
okay. Thank you, John.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Frida, you okay with the vote?
Yes, I have.
All right, thank you. All right. Moving on. Authorizations, Meg, anything has to be paid? I didn't see anything come through.
I sent you the manager's letter earlier today, sorry.
Oh,
Actually, now that I think about it, I don't know where I sent it. I didn't
I didn't see it.
No, I only sent it to Jay.
okay.
I was
Okay.
having a real problem with my email this morning. I apologize. So the only item on there is for Frida for her work from February 7th through March 28th in the amount of $604.30.
I move we approve the town manager, acting town manager to pay Frida's invoice in the amount so stated.
Second.
second. Oh, sorry.
all right. Okay, roll call. John Miller?
Aye.
Okay. Mark?
Aye.
Geetha already has it. Don, Frank,
Aye. Yeah.
John? Todd,
Aye.
Lisa?
Yes.
Okay, it passed. Might have no problem with John's audio. There you
I
go,
think
John.
John's back.
Aye.
Thank you, John.
Sorry. Following 2 meetings at once.
You must be in between sips of wine or something.
No, I wish. I wish. I'm on another call.
Oh,
Well,
sorry.
sorry about that.
Meg, send me a copy of that so I can put it out on the Google Docs.
I will.
Thank you.
All right. Other business. So, John, you want to explain what you sent out, and then we'll see if we put it
Yeah,
on the agenda or what we can do.
Yeah, can I run through it?
There you go.
John, I just brought it up.
Well, I appreciate that. I was hoping that I could hit the go button, but is that okay?
I think it's a PDF, so I can, if you like, just tell me where you want to go and I'll go.
Okay. That's right. Well, we do have control here. You have control. So it seems to me that that both, I know FinCom was, I think, 14-0 against the Carriage House last year. And I don't speak for FinCom, but FinCom has some serious reservations about the carriage house. I think both committees should take a serious look at Mystic. It could be swing space for central office. It could be permanent space for central office. It's also, the land is a site for a possible new building for central office. So if you go to the next slide, I'm going to run through this really quickly. That's the site. Go ahead, next one. And you can look at this at your own pleasure later. The second floor is the home of the rec. It's about 23,000 square feet without the gym and the stage. They run a child's daycare program, they run after school program, and they run adult programs there. So you keep going. That's the gym and the stage at, back and forth pictures of that site. You keep going. The first floor, there's a 5-year lease that ends on the day that that school ends next year. It's leased to Winchester After School. This is, I think it's called, I forget the name of it.
Kids Corner, John.
Kids Corner,
Yeah.
right. The yearly rental, the income to the, I don't know whether the income goes to the school or goes to the rec department, but it's between 28 and 31K. The lease runs out at the end of June. There's 17,000 square feet on the first floor, excluding the gym and the stage. I took some pictures there if you keep scrolling. The next picture is, there's boys and girls bathroom on the first floor. That's the main corridor. There's an office there on the first floor. These programs run after school. So these are the 4 of the larger classrooms on the first floor at Mystic. One of them is completely empty. The other 3 weren't being used when I was there. It was the middle of the day. But they're nice. The upper right is a classroom kind of kitchen at the northwest corner facing Main Street towards Madison Ave. The other 3 classes face towards Marshall Street. Or Marshall Road, I guess it is. So if you keep going, so here are the pros and cons. It's a functioning building with twice the required space needed. I think that's what the carriage house is, 8 to 9,000. It removes the pressure of a very aggressive schedule on the carriage house. A lot of things have to go right for everything to work. The third reason is it ensures the carriage house doesn't muck up anything on the Lynch. And I'm really excited that Lynch is going so well. Our team is great. We don't want to screw any of that up. And it's a capital savings. If you go to the next slide, the cons, the after school program would need to relocate for a couple years. There's a loss of 32K per year and 2 years of rental payment. And it doesn't solve and I certainly agree that we need to solve the central office long-term problem. I'm on board completely with that. So possible mitigations, maybe the school committee could arrange with the after-school program to use another elementary school for a couple years and come back to Mystic after in 25, 26. And as I said, it doesn't solve the central office space need. If you go to the next slide, the first floor could become a permanent space. And, what we could consider doing is allowing at Springtown meeting, allow funds to design a renovation that would work for central office. If the renovations were kept simple, that should be relatively straightforward, and fall town meeting authorizes it. And it's a smaller project than the carriage house. It's renovation only. We could probably get it done. The pros are listed. I think the third one I hadn't mentioned before is it kind of solidifies the commitment to the rec department. It gets central office away from, like right now it's right next to Ambrose. And I think it would be a better traffic performing location long-term than Ambrose or than any other major school. The cons are, if this happened, we'd have to figure out something for the after-school program 6 months early. I think the more interesting opportunity there is that maybe the Mystic site could be a location for a new central office. And what, just just a brainstorming idea. I talked to a couple other people. Maybe there's a new building disguised as a residence. It would be a little bit, it could be a little bit bigger than the carriage house. It could be designed by one of our residential architects. It could be built by one of our residential contractors. It could be positioned along Main Street or along Marshall Road, but designed to look like a house, okay? And there's some pictures there of what Main Street looks like. If you keep going, Chris. So the idea would be, it would be really a home. There is spots, there is a spot on the southwest corner of the site where I think that size building might fit. It would, so those are some views, and these are just exemplar footprints. But the idea would be a house that isn't a house. It's an office. It's an office building that looks like a house. Like if you were in Woodstock, Vermont, or somewhere like that, it would be an office building up there. And the idea would be to, this would be completely disconnected. This kind of construction wouldn't be a massive interference with anybody. And I think it would take a lot of pressure off the carriage house in the middle of the Lynch rebuild. The last slide is just some of my thoughts about pros and cons. This solves the need for a permanent home. I'm fully on board with that. You know, I think Frank makes a very persuasive case. Chris Nixon has made that case. It's very persuasive. If central office moved to Mystic on a temporary basis, knowing that they were going to move into a new building there, we might be able to skip some of the renovation costs of, you know, if it really was temporary space and, you know, it was known that we weren't going to maroon central office in the first floor of Mystic. The cons, we'd have to fund that new home. You know, somebody's wild guess, you know, my wild guess is $1.5 million. There are some parking questions, but on balance, the parking situation down at Mystic along Main Street is going to be better than it is going to be up at Ambrose, and the traffic situation, it seems to me. The other mitigation here is that I think we're getting to a point where Parkhurst is an old and tired building. Once it's used this last time for swing space, it's time to unload it. And it's time for that property to be transferred back to the town for sale. You know, we have a lot of capital needs. We've got probably $100 million in school projects coming, and we need the money. So I just think, you know, we need to be a little more robust in our analysis of what might happen with this, with central office. And you know, and I know I'm just got appointed as the liaison from FinCom. I haven't been here as long as everyone else, but it's a lot of money to rebuild an historic building, and you know, I'm just concerned that we not put ourselves in a pickle. Okay.
Thank you, John. So we get direction from the school committee. I don't know if this is something we really can bring up. I don't know. We have to think about this. I mean, it's not like we're out the ones out looking for the solution. School committee, per the master plan, I guess the master plan tells us what to do via the school committee when they went out. So,
well, Jay, I'll put my school committee hat on just for a minute and say, I mean, there's a lot of work here, so I appreciate John put a lot into this.
Yes, there is.
There's a lot. So, so the master plan says, in particular, that the reason we care not to excess or surplus the Mystic site is because we envision it as the location for our 6th neighborhood elementary school, if and only if Winchester's enrollment should, you know, grow unabated in not in this decade, but the following decade, because geographically it's sort of in the right place. So there's no plan to do anything on the Mystic site, but other than to sort of keep what we have and literally do nothing with it because we see value there. a couple of interesting things. So first of all, that the lease with Kids Corner, John's quite right on the dates. They're actually, they're rolling into year 5. They have an option for 5 consecutive annual renewals. And as I think I was explaining to FinCom when we met with them, John, on the 12th, the school committee is charged with approving generally the terms of the lease because it is a school building. But we were sort of kept out of the financial negotiation. The way that lease works, there's actually there's an exhibit that's attached to the lease that has all the numbers associated with it. And Chapter 40, Section 3, actually is the Mass General Law that says school committees can rent buildings. We can lease buildings. Then those monies go into a fund during the year. We can actually use some of that money to maintain that building if we want to. As a practical matter, we don't. It just, at the end of the fiscal year, it all reverts back to the general fund. And so perhaps because former town managers felt the money goes to the general fund, not to the school committee, we've kind of been largely kept out of the discussion about what we should be charging for that space. And certainly the rates that have been charged historically are very, very low. And that is, I think, a really important and valid topic of discussion, John. And I've even had some conversation with the superintendent about that, just knowing kind of where we are in that 5-year contract, separate and apart from anything that happens at Mystic. You know, my only thought, John, would be, and I was on the road when that email came out. I was pretty close to Sims Corner. So what I would just offer quickly is we need, according to the space program that TAPE has developed, we need about 7,300 gross square feet. The parking spaces in that lot, John, are 8 feet wide and they're about 15.5 feet long. So, you know, that footprint right there, sort of the big rectangle, is about 48 by 33. And if we're adding, you know, 150 square feet per side, and that's a 2-story element, you know, it's maybe half what we need. So it seems
I walked it. I walked it. So, and that's PowerPoint. So I walked it. There's room for 100 by 40 in my PowerPoint's off, but I walked it. That parking lot is 100 feet wide, top to bottom.
I used my measuring tape, is what I'm telling you. So I actually had a measuring tape, and I took your drawing and I went and I laid the tape down right at that edge. You know, you're showing the footprint here right at the edge of that little arrow that shows the turn. And yep. So that's 33.5 feet from the grass to that little arrow. So it's about 33.5 by 48 for the big block. I mean, the idea is, you know, whether it's it's too small, but, you know, maybe it's 3-story, right? Or maybe it has like a full basement. I think the bigger issue is, does that sort of make sense as a move? And I think Jay's right. I mean, you know, it's the master plan that gives us the direction that was created with the input of many, including a number of people from the finance committee at the time. And I must tell you, from a traffic point of view, the Mystic School is interesting because you've got that Kids Corner group that John showed you picked. They use that lower level space, and John's right. During the day, it's empty, but we do have preschools that are running upstairs, and so that's a pretty busy parking lot in the morning. You've got drop off for the little ones for Kid Connection, and we also have another program that runs elsewhere at the top of the building. And so you kind of have, I'll say, like the town run preschools. And then that traffic kind of moves off. And then pretty shortly thereafter, the big yellow buses come with kids for both Kids Corner downstairs and the rec program upstairs. So this would
they go in from Main Street, though. They come in from Main Street.
The buses park on Main Street, John, and all the kids kind of bail and they walk across that right. play area and into the building. And so some go up.
They walk across the turf. Yep.
Yeah, so some of the kids, like going to Nick's program, they just go upstairs, and then the kids who are part of Kids Corner, they stay downstairs. Interestingly, Kids Corner used to operate when they were first created. They're a not-for-profit group. They first were established at the Lincoln School, and then got displaced because we were renovating the Lincoln School, and subsequently needed more space.
it's an attractive I'm just saying, like, we've got to do something permanently. I'm totally on board with that. We've got to do something permanently. We're just
John,
worried
one
that
other thing I want to mention is Mystic is actually our oldest school. And it just like Mystic is within like 500 square feet, the same size as Parkhurst. They're so similar. They're both built into a hill. They have a larger upper floor, and they were both added onto. I think Mystic was built in like 1921, and then the addition came 5 or 6 years later. So it's actually our oldest school. I would say it's in the worst shape. But we've also had ADA complaints filed against us with the Mass Architectural Access Board at Mystic. And we've had to address that by limiting some of the program opportunities in there. So although you could certainly, if you said, let's put central office at the lower level, you can sort of avoid the elevator question, but we still have, we have routes that are not accessible. The bathrooms are not accessible. I mean, there would be quite a lot of work required to make it accessible. So there would definitely need to be investment.
To put central office there?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, any type of renovation like this has to go up to the top standards. It would have to be, it would be a very big expense. And any modifications to any building that the town has to meet the top standards at this point. And that would include central office.
Mark, did you have a question too? You had your hand up. Are you all set?
I think I'm okay.
Okay. So what's the proper, this isn't for us. I mean, it's a good pointers, but it's not our decisions.
Why isn't it
John,
for us?
Because the EFPBC gets the charge from the school committee.
Oh, no,
telling us what to do.
Jay, that's not totally true. Our charter is with town meeting. We
listen to the school committee.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Okay.
I mean, we answer to town meeting, not to the school committee. We work with the school committee. I mean, I can find the documentation that created the committee back in 1996 and distribute it. But I mean, I think it's some great ideas that John is throwing out there. I like them, quite frankly. But it's complicated, very complicated.
Yeah, I don't know what to do. You know.
We have similar discussions on FinCom. FinCom's charter says, it says explicitly, we work for town meeting.
Yeah, there you go.
So that's why I was confused. Sorry, Jay.
Right, I knew the charter was from town meeting. We get direction from the school committee is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Well, EFPBC was Don, it was created to begin with, wasn't it, for the middle school renovation project? Do I have that right?
Well, it started out, yeah, with Lincoln and middle school and rearranging the priorities. Lincoln was going to be done first, but there was a peak going through the middle school, and we had to move we moved all the students off site. That renovation addition, and then we got hurt because that was like the peak of the building construction at the time. We had to lop a floor off. We lost 12 classrooms that we ultimately had to add back in later with a second, and then we went on to a third and I think a fourth edition of it, to it. But we used Parkhurst, we used Mystic. We went through the same kind of problems. The rec department was using Mystic School, but we had to put students there, 6th or 7th grade. The other grade went to Parkhurst, and the 8th graders went to the high school because there was room at the high school for them to just move over. And when it was a 2.5-year project. But
well, the reason I was asking, Don, is so that sort of comports with my memory. The EFPBC was sort of created as a school building committee for the middle school project, and then in the blink of an eye, there was more work to be done, right, with Lincoln.
Oh, absolutely, right.
And then there was the E-wing, and if you look back at the historical record at town meeting, the EFPBC, it's actually been expanded a little bit over the years too, because it's a lot of work, and so more people were required, and so that's kind of how we were created, and then the master plan got folded into that as well. So the EFPBC certainly follows the master plan, and in many instances even sort of creates the master plan and develops the project.
Oh, it does, yeah, right, exactly, yeah, exactly.
What I'm most concerned about is that I think that option B now that's been drawn up by Charlie, it's fine, but that's just, people are going to look at that and they're going to go, oh my God. So, which is fine, but what I don't want to have happen is have the central office guys get screwed or screw up the Lynch. I mean, my God, we're right on the doorstep, So, and people have been waiting a long time. So I'm just concerned. That's all.
Mark, you have a question?
Yeah, I don't know how far we're taking this conversation, but in terms of some questions about this, this potential proposal, John, there are a couple of things that came up to me. One, I think Lisa had addressed a little bit earlier, which is that Parkhurst has already had the elevator installed, and it's not fully ADA compliant as far as I know. It's not up to the highest levels, but it is accessible, at least in terms of access to the several floors. I don't think the Mystic School is. The carriage house is still a town asset. And if nothing happens, if it's not used for something, it is still a liability that the town has to deal with. So there's still cost associated with it, whether it's making it safe, whether it's demolishing it, whether it's restoring it for some other use, there's still cost associated with it. And I'm a little worried after hearing what Chris had to say about the Mystic School as a potential site, if it were ever needed, to burden that site with additional, say like a new build structure, which in many ways is actually a really great idea because you can just get kind of a clean start on something, but it also then burdens that site with an imposition of parking requirements and the building itself that eats away from the total footprint, which at least from what I can see in the aerial is pretty tight for some future use.
I agree with you.
It seems like there's a lot more conversation that would be warranted to consider this option. And I mean, I leave it to Jay to tell us like what, whether it's something that we should discuss as a group or it should involve others like FinCom or the school committee or other groups in town.
It's going to take a little bit of research, but I think we have to get it as an agenda item if that's, but I think with the, Chris, on the Parkhurst, we're up to ADA except for the handrails, correct?
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I forgot I was trying to keep on mute a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, Parkhurst is what we call now 99% accessible. The state, the MAAB gave us permission to make it what we called horizontally accessible for the VO project so that we did not have to put in the elevator, the stage lift, or bring the stairs up to code. So last year, we actually did do the elevator project. We put in the stage lift, and Charlie and his team getting back into the building, they have it on their scope list. Literally the last thing to do is to create handrails and guardrails that are ADA compliant. And as Mark and a couple of other know, there's a certain profile and distance from the rail. It's all basically, it's like ornamental metalwork is all that it is. I mean, it's 99.9% accessible, and maybe a couple of pieces of signage. So it's really like, it's there, it's at the finish line, which is exciting. The piece that I was just able to find that I'll throw up for you guys, this is from the executive summary in the master plan. Mystic was, sorry, I was off by 4 years. Mystic constructed in 1925 and hasn't been used as a school building since it was used as swing space for renovation of Lincoln in 2000. However, the school facility still has value for future enrollment growth and/or swing space beyond the next decade. In other words, not for this, but looking to the future. The school's location within Winchester is preferred should a 6th elementary school or some other instructional building be necessary to accommodate long-term enrollment growth. The school does not currently have an elevator, adding an elevator will enhance the facility and make it more suitable for future use. And there's some other language there in the master plan, but there were folks both on FinCom and the select board that asked us to take a little time to think about Mystic. And we kind of basically said, well, it's an asset and we don't really see use for it in this decade, but maybe the next one. And we'll have to revisit that next time we update the master plan. It'll be very interesting to see what enrollment does in this town.
John, you have a question?
But that argument bolsters, I think, what I'm saying, Chris. If you could get a horizontal permit for I don't see why you couldn't get a horizontal permit for central administrative staff if it's temporary, okay? If it's
I can tell you why. No, I'll tell you why the MAAB let us do it specifically because we were taking an inaccessible building in VO and building a fully accessible building. And they said, so we'll let you put those kids in Parkhurst only if you do the following things. We'll give you a pass on the other things. And when you're done, when you move out, you can only use one floor of that building, which is why we've been stuck since 2013 without that elevator finished.
Yeah, but so I think you just confirmed what I said. And like the second point, Mark, was, and I agree with you about using the space, but right now we're hanging on to a pretty valuable asset. It's used after school on the first floor only. It's for very short dollars. And you know, if we're holding that asset for the next 10 years to use it as potential future elementary school site or et cetera, it makes sense to me to use it more effectively now for schools. So, I mean, right now we're getting nothing out of it, like literally nothing, except the rec department's getting a second floor. And the kids get, I mean, they get it, but you know, it's just looking at us. It's just sitting there empty during the day.
Except it's occupied, right, by two programs? So it's not
after school.
occupied.
After school.
Yeah.
So Kids Corner uses it downstairs, Mark, as an after-school program, and then the upstairs is used really morning and throughout the day, and then there's some limited evening programs. I think Nick is getting back into pre-COVID. There were evening programs that were run in the building, and I'm sure he's getting back to that.
Ethan, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I know after school supports different families too. I was just wondering, you know, looking at the solution for the after school, would it also fall on the burden of the town? I mean, I guess, you know, I'm just asking, what would be the fair solution? I mean, I know I have passed that stage, but there are families depend on that too, you know, just asking.
It's for pay now. The after school program that's run in the first floor is for fee.
Correct, but where would be the space for them?
Well, I think so. Like as has happened to them before, that happened to Bartlett School when VO was done, or I guess it was Ambrose when Ambrose was done. They had to go. They had to find other space until it was over. So it's not, I mean, we're holding assets so we can use them, not so that we can't use them.
Mark?
Yeah, so
I'll shut up and I'll say no more. Sorry, Jay.
No, Mark.
no, I would love to see us find a way to encourage the town to make the highest and best use of the assets that it has, and make use of right-sized spaces and make use of them in a permanent condition and not as a temporary solution. So, you know, John, I like the idea, like if there were some way that it worked and you could do a new construction building that was the central administration building and it were on the Mystic site and we could prove to ourselves that it would still be usable, you know, the rest of the site would still be usable as a school, that seems like a viable option as something to study for central administration. I don't know if it's like the right location in town, but it seems fine. We still have the carriage house, which is unused and abandoned and falling apart. So that still needs to be addressed. And so for me, it's like, you know, seeing the options that are available on the table, it seems like making use of, you know, renovating the carriage house, understanding that there's a modest premium to do that with an existing building, but it's been proven to be a place, at least by TEPE, that could be used for central administration. Solve central administration, permanently done, check that box. And then we still have Mystic, we still have Parkhurst. Those are available to be used as swing space for the time being, understanding that they still both have questions about their long-term utility for the town and for the schools, but they are classroom buildings. And so to me, their highest and best use is as classroom buildings, not as office space. So that's where I'm standing right now, but understanding I've only had, whatever, 2 hours, 2 hours to think about it since that email came.
Yeah.
Well, Jay, let me, if I can, I want to throw the agenda back up. Oh yeah, because the meeting dates, right? So were we saying we should assume we're going to meet
Next Monday, the 11th,
Yeah.
and then due to April vacation, sorry, and town meeting, we will not meet again until 5/16. So do we want to try to get everyone digest this and try to have a conversation? But I don't know if we have the authority to do that next week. Don's been on the longest. What's your thoughts, Don? You're on mute.
Yeah, there's no reason why we can't propose a plan, and come back with something and, develop what John has laid out a little bit further tonight as a possibility. But like you're saying, Jay, this whole thing is very complicated now, but John has presented a good option. I like the idea of building something new that's permanent on the old Mystic site. I mean, just so everybody knows, at one time, the Mystic School was going to be torn down and a new Lincoln was going to be built at Mystic. And this is what got me on the committee. There was a big battle over whether renovating Lincoln, a 1904 Beaux-Arts building that was bigger, had separate cafeteria, had separate gymnasium, had separate auditorium, was worth saving or not. And the MSBA had this, the director at the time had this philosophy that the only good school is a new school you couldn't renovate. And we proved him wrong by renovating and adding to the building significantly. And then all of a sudden, when we had open enrollment, every parent wanted their kid to go to Lincoln School, and we had to stop open enrollment for the kids. So we're running out of time here on Lynch, and as everybody's saying, and Frank, maybe you can jump in here on this, but we don't want to stop the work we're doing on Lincoln. But if there's some way we can kind of sidebar, what we do with admin, assume we get the kids off the site. I mean, I think that's critical to minimize the downtime or the amount of time and coming up with the best cost for construction. We've got to make those assumptions and see how we can move this forward.
I mean, if option one fails, option two could be this moving central office to Mystic. Because it would be up to the school committee to find a home or an option for a home if they still wanted to. I mean, we're not set on the decision for option two.
So my feeling there's Mark has his hand up, but there's an important operational element to this. So what Frank thinks as superintendent, what he prefers and what he thinks and what he wants is of great interest to the school committee, right? So if Article 1 fails and Article 2 passes, and Frank wants to have an extended conversation about some interim place for central office that can better accommodate the Lynch construction and swing space, I think that's a conversation for him to bring to the table. I mean, the other conversation that's been out there, as you guys know, FinCom has asked a couple of times, what about moving central office into rental space for a couple of years? So that was evaluated in the fall. We got some good input from Cushman and Wakefield. Brian couldn't be with us tonight, but he's gotten some new information from Jones Lang LaSalle that basically is identical to what we got in the fall. And we can really build a financial model. We have an idea about what that costs.
Yeah,
Challenge is, where do we get the money for it?
Mark, do you have a question?
Yeah, I think it's just a timing thing, right? That if the carriage house article fails and central admin does not, and the carriage house construction doesn't move on, I don't think we have time to approve an alternative permanent location for the same reason that the carriage house, like it either happens now or it doesn't.
Well, it wouldn't be a permanent, maybe. It would be a temporary to move the central office to Mystic under John's plan while the permanent was designed, right?
And so we can do that, and we just spend money on stuff that's temporary. I guess I'm just kind of opposed to spending money on temporary stuff if we can spend money on permanent.
Right, we just keep on doing it. Frank, do you have a question?
Article 2 is not written for any investment in Mystic. It's for Parkhurst, just to be clear. So there's that timing issue, but there's
right. It wouldn't be investment. I was just saying, could they be a temporary office without putting any money into there? I don't know. This is really just all come true in the last couple hours, like you said. Frank, do you have a comment?
So objectively, and I was just going to say what Mark just said. I mean, we're really only take the vacation week out. We're like 2 or 3 weeks away from knowing the fate of Article 2. So it seems to me that if Article 2 were not to pass, then to Mark's point, the question is, what would we do? We have one option of lobbing on a lot more modulars. Maybe there's some, but we would be forced to explore a lot of different options to be able to accomplish the goal, which I think would remain the goal of getting all the kids off the Lynch site. So I just don't, I appreciate the work that John's done, and I appreciate the thinking. Respectfully, it does feel like it is, well, admittedly, right, it's last minute idea that I generally respond pretty well to last minute ideas, but I haven't had a minute to even think about it. So, but I don't know that from a procedural standpoint, even this is worth the conversation right now, or is it, if something happens, if Article 2 does not pass at Springtown meeting, then we are in a different place.
I'm kind of thinking the same
different
thing.
Place, but I think the goal would remain the same, that we want all the kids off the site.
Yeah.
And maybe we just can't accomplish it, but.
I break my promise. I would just say that just so everyone knows, like, people could reasonably disagree about whether redoing the carriage house is money well spent, as opposed to building a new place for the central office. So it's not. So people are going to reasonably disagree about that. I'm on the other side of it from you, Mark. Not because I think you're crazy. It's it's just we just have a different view on it. That's all.
Yeah, no, I totally get that, and I appreciate that, John. Thanks for saying that. I'm thinking about it now. It's the timing thing that has me most concerned.
I could say, Jay, honestly, I felt being in this committee for many years, and I just deep down felt every time we have gone to the town meeting, in my opinion, with a clear article, and I just felt this time it's just option 1 and option 2. But having said that, I think, certain things I just felt it wasn't flushed out at the beginning, it was just like, okay, this is how it's going to be. And, whatever that we have in front of us, in my sincere feeling, we just didn't immerse enough to see what would be the best option, it was being either pushed or whatever. But
it's in the master plan, right?
Right.
I mean, I cannot say master plan, Scott. Master plan, when it's put out 10 years ago, and we have new information in hand. And when we come saying, what is written in the master plan, let us execute that. That's not right. Because master plan is at that time, what is available put together, maybe it reached only 20 people, now 100 people, so we cannot say what's written in the master plan, just come and execute. I don't agree with that. But anyway, I have seen enough in this committee for many, many years. And I sincerely felt the beginning of the option, okay, this is what in master plan, just come and execute. And, I just, from my heart, I speak, that's not right. Yes, master plan is clear. Let us flush it out, what is in front of us. So anyway, and then I just felt we had gone with a clear article to town. And this time I felt like option A, option B, and it just kind of bothers my mind. That's all.
At the very beginning, we did discuss as a committee moving everyone off, and the consensus is it would never work. And it wasn't, that was brought up, and everyone had comments, we'll never get every kid off of every student off of that campus.
As a committee, Jay, we are charged with, we are aware of how the construction is, whatnot and whatnot. School committee, we can advise them. Yes, Don's point to that with part of my broken English, we have the ability to see the spectrum of construction side of it. So when the new building comes, we can express what our thoughts are, So I don't necessarily fit and say the school committee has to tell us what to say, because this is a building in play. And as John's saying, is John Miller saying, it's just a caveat of if that, the carriage house is a big assumption, is everything is going to happen, construction wise too. And we can say our thing too, but anyway.
But that's not the carriage house wasn't our decision as a committee.
Construction aspect of it, that's the charge of this committee, correct?
Right, the school committee has given it to us to build it, right?
Yeah, that's all. The construction aspect of it, we kind of maybe see better, a little better, and we can advise. So anyway, I don't want to say it, but I'm just speaking from my heart, that's all.
Gita, Jay, can I say something real quick?
Sure.
Yeah.
So just to be really clear about this, I feel like both Frank and me at time, myself, whatever, I think we had been clear with the school committee from the very beginning that not just TAP A, but all the architects and even prior to them, Andy, the folks who were interviewing for the OPM role felt strongly that we were going to need some sort of swing space to pull off this project. And every time we said that to the school committee, they heard us, but I think they were looking to be kind of convinced. There are a lot of folks who were hoping there'd be a way to do it with no swing space. And we've even heard from some people at the kickoff back on November 16th that the priority should be to build Lynch without swing space. So I give credit to Charlie and his team, because some of the 2 or 3 of those options we saw did that. But the only way to do that is you add like a year to the project. It meant the Lynch wouldn't be ready till the fall of 26. And so the school committee kind of came to understand that in order to stick to fall 25, which is the community expectation, you got to have swing space. And we were working hard, again, I think being very clear with the committee, we were doing everything we could to minimize it. So there really has been kind of a shift in thinking, maybe now that the project is so visible and people can understand it and understand Charlie's phasing diagrams, that the priorities shifted a little bit. And the last thing I would say with respect to the carriage house, I do not believe at all it's a new item. That, first of all, the master plan's not 10 years old, it's 5 years old. And town meeting approved the schematic design like 3 years ago, and it was held up at town hall for about a year. And we finally got going on it. We did the work. Charlie did a nice job. We came back to town meeting and asked if we could take it one more step, because it's a big deal to ask for $5.9 million. We wanted to be sure it wasn't going to be 7 or 8 or 9, which would be like, that would be ludicrous. So, town meeting, I feel, has been hearing this message periodically over the years, and maybe doesn't feel it's as new as you do, but I feel like we've certainly we've gotten it to a point where we can give town meeting all the information they need, and they either support it or they don't. But I think Article 2 is a really good safety net, and I'm glad John Miller suggested it last month, so that we're not going to town meeting with all our eggs in one basket.
Todd?
Just a question. Is there a reason why we can't renovate Mystic for a permanent relocation of admin? It would be certainly cheaper than renovating the carriage house.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Todd, just for the reasons we were saying earlier, that's not what the master plan calls for. Master plan says we should hang on to that as a site for a future elementary school, but to be evaluated in the next round of the master plan.
Also fair.
But 10 years from now, if those numbers came true, you're still holding it. It's still in your possession. And
Why
then
not use it?
The good news is we don't have to wait 10 years, John, only 5. We need to be, actually not less than that. We need to be going to town meeting in 2015 looking for funding for the next master plan. Because we funded the current one back in 15, did the work in 16 and finished it in the spring of 17. And we voted it in the summer of 17. So time flies.
I respect you a lot, Chris. I like you. You've done a lot of stuff that's been great, but we have different views of what a master plan is. Of course, a master plan changes. A plan is a plan. If we ever exactly implemented a master plan, we should be kicked around in the head with no change, not a single change. I get you. It's a direction. It's not a legal document, a binding document on future actions by future people. But
that's why I think the committee
I think we're
needs
in
direction.
disagreement.
Yeah.
John, I was just saying we don't need to wait 10 years to figure out what the direction of the next master plan is, and we don't need to wait 10 years to figure out what enrollment would suggest we do. It's going to be here in the blink of an eye. That's all.
I agree.
Mark?
Yeah, Todd, to your question, I think we had touched on it earlier, but the Mystic School is a fairly large building, about 40,000 square feet.
30.
Something like that. It's 30. And the central admin doesn't even need half of that as a footprint. So we're again misallocating, we're sort of mismatching the space needs with the space used. And it's currently a building that is also a revenue source, a very modest one for the town, but is actually occupied by 2 programs that would be displaced by temporarily locating admin there, and then the admin still needs a home long-term. And
So we would have to bring the whole building up to code at that point if we start touching it.
I think so, yeah.
Oh.
You have to bring the building up to code once you hit the 30% trigger. And I don't know what the assessed value of Mystic is. The assessed value at Parkhurst went up in the past year from, it used to be like 8.4 and now it's a little under 10 or something. But the renovation, like for a dedicated admin suite, we looked at those numbers with TAP A for doing that at Parkhurst, and it's, $280 to $310 a foot. So that adds up quickly. I would expect the assessed value of Mystic is lower, but only because it's an older bill. I mean, really, the issue is I should shut up. I'm not in my wheelhouse. We just have to go look and see what it says.
Yeah, I'm not either.
I mean, I would agree with John Miller. You'd have to spend, I think John's slideshow said at least 1.5 million, right? Is that what you had, John?
I was guessing on a new building, on the new building. If a house, I was talking about a house.
3 times as much, probably.
No.
12,000 square foot house at $300 a square foot is seen
4,000 of it is a basement.
With an elevator, which itself is $500,000 minimum. So,
yeah, if we're lucky.
Yeah, I mean, at Parkhurst it was $1 million plus, right?
Yeah,
So-
Frank is going to give rides. If everybody wants to come see the
I guess I know this is a detailed question. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but does this house have we talking jacuzzis, fire pits out back? I just don't want to throw this idea out.
It's going to be the Hackett
superintendent. Then I
the
think
Hackett fire pit would be.
That we should kick this around a little bit more if it's a residence for the superintendent.
Mystic is valued, assessed at $16.8 million.
For Mystic?
Mystic.
Wow,
Wow.
that's pretty good.
You'd have to spend more than 5 million bucks on a renovation before
Yeah.
you'd have to bring the building up to code,
Yeah.
the whole building up to code.
Oh, 1 million will be the elevator.
Easy.
We didn't do it for 1 million at Parker's. Were you kidding
You
me?
don't need an
I know.
elevator. You don't need an elevator, Meg. Why do you need an elevator?
You do.
At the Mystic,
You have
Yes.
to. You
you're
need
gonna
it.
have to
Way
put
it's
an
designed.
elevator in. Yeah, to make it minimally accessible.
You close the stairwells so they can't go out or up.
That's a fire
That's-
hazard.
Where's
I don't know
Where's
much
Rick
about
Tustin when
code.
I need him?
Couple chains.
No, I don't mean with a chain.
I know. We're just
I
giving you a
know what
hard
you're
time now.
saying, but just don't forget that house that we're gonna build has to be publicly bid and prevailing wages would apply.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
yes, so you're not gonna get your local builder or your local architect, so sorry.
No, those guys charge more than those union guys.
I just hope that I don't get a rash of phone calls tomorrow from both Nick and Andy about.
They're gonna
them
have a
being
rash of
kicked-
parents that think their kids are
They're
getting
thinking
Yeah,
that
kicked out
they're
of school.
kicked out of the Mystic School next
Yeah.
week, so.
I'll be
I
getting
can-
the parent calls. There'll be signs put up
Yeah.
on lawns right outside my
Oh
office
my God.
before I get
They'll
there.
start the second this meeting is over.
I know, I can see it now.
All right.
All right, so we should,
Send us
Jay,
an
we should
email,
hold the meeting for next week, right? And
Yes.
then
Let's
Andy or
all take a look
Vivian
at
or
this.
Charlie can help us come up with some agenda items if we need to for next week.
So a meeting on the 11th and then again on the 16th. Is that correct, Jay?
That's correct. Yeah, we have
That
April
is-
vacation and town meeting.
The
Okay.
16th of May, Lisa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what, yeah. I just want to make sure. Yeah, okay.
Right. Yes. Sorry. All right. Can we get a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay. John Miller.
Aye.
Mark. It's Keitha. Todd.
Aye.
Frank.
I
Don.
Aye.
And Lisa.
Yes.
And John.
Aye.
All right, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you